This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by the Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am a fire officer up in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm also a writer, contributor. I like to say I'm a contributor to Fire Rescue One. I hope so. I'm still here driving this ship, or actually I'm not driving anything. We all know who's really driving the show. It's the commander. It's the editor-in-chief who is happily with us today, Janelle Fosquet. You are super excited because you have followed this individual via TV. Am I correct?
Yes, I'm a little starstruck here. We actually have a reality star in our midst today.
So we have the one and only Captain Fernando Calderon, who is he's a fire captain from Ventura County Fires, had over 20 years of experience there working with that fire department. And in his spare time, by the way, he is a reality star for the TV show Naked and Afraid. And if you're just listening to us, I'm not going to tell you whether he's closed or not. You should go over to our YouTube channel and take a look. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Aaron, Janelle, thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. You've had some pretty impressive guests, so I feel honored to be in this pool of guests on your show.
I think you have the most TV credits. We'll give you that so far, and probably the most screen time of any one of our guests so far. I think all of you. You've definitely had more skin on TV than anybody else that we've ever had on this program. I'm going to go with that.
I'll take that title, sure, yeah.
Man, I got to ask, Naked and Afraid, why?
Oh, that is a good question. I want to start off by just saying I'm actually a very normal guy. I'm very no. I say that because it's such an extreme show, and I'm just like a typical like suburban, married to my high school sweetheart, like have four amazing kids, like live in a little cul-de-sac. Like I'm a really normal guy, and the fact that I got wrapped up in this extreme survival challenge, to this day, still shocks me. I don't even know how I got here. But to launch into your question, the show has been on for like 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And when the show first came out 12 years ago on Discovery Channel, it was pretty big news. It was like really provocative. They used the title Naked and Afraid. It was just like you weren't going to be clothed. And if you think back to those days, this survival was becoming like this big niche. Like they had Man versus Wild with Bear Grylls. He was getting awesome ratings. They had a guy named Les Stroud doing Survivor Man. He was going out there doing all kinds of cool survival things. So the survival entertainment genre was like really blowing up and kind of like blossoming, 10, 12 years ago. So here comes Discovery. And they've had, again, Man versus Wild. They've had Survivor Man. And Discovery comes in with just blows the lid off the whole genre and goes, you know what? Because at this point, they're doing 5 days, Bear Grylls. They're doing 7 days. They're clothed. They have a ton of gear. And Discovery goes, no, let's do 21 days naked, a guy and a girl, strangers, one item each. And I heard about the show. I recall distinctly watching it in the firehouse. It was
Yep.
good, like nighttime firehouse TV.
Yeah,
People were
it had
talking
Naked
about
in it, so everybody's in, right? Let's be honest.
There was a buzz around it because of the provocative title. And again, at this point I am not a survivalist. I am a very normal guy back then, as I am now. But I remember watching an episode and just being fascinated with just the all-encompassing challenge that they have created. I mean, it was like mentally brutal, physically insane, emotionally so taxing. And I just saw it and I was like, wow, that is the ultimate test to find out what you're made of. Like I can't think of anything else, because you could run a marathon, you could write a book, you can do various things in your life to push yourself intellectually, physically, but just an all-encompassing challenge like this at the time was unheard of. And I'm not a TV guy at all, but something possessed me to apply. After I watched one episode, I go, let me just go online, see what it takes to do this, and the rest is history. Which is crazy because that was 10 years ago now, and I've been on the show multiple times since.
So wait a minute, you didn't have like you weren't like a, Cub Scout, Boy Scout, like have like this big background on how to start fire with your eyes and two, Q-tips or anything like that, right? Like so
No,
you're just like,
yeah,
I think I could try this or I want to try to challenge myself and you apply.
yeah. Yeah, well, so I'll say I've kind of been like an outdoorsy kind of guy. Like I've done some backpacking and some camping, and I've climbed some big mountains with some friends of mine around the world. But nothing like this. Very much like weekend warrior type things. Nothing in regards to survival. I'm always like, okay, I'm gonna go backpacking in the Sierra Nevada for a week. I'll have a bunch of stuff. I'll have my jet broil and my freeze dried meals, and so nothing super mainstream stuff. Just basic kind of outdoor stuff. But I've always been drawn to pushing myself. I've always been like, wow, I feel like the most fulfilled in life whenever I do something really, really hard. I kind of power through it, accomplish it, and I go, oh, that's always a really fun journey for me. So what really drew me to this wasn't even the naked part or the survival part. It was just the sheer like, wow, what a way to see what you're made of. And
Cool.
the whole time I'm watching the show that first time, I'm wondering, could I do it? Could I do it? Like if I was in a plane crash over the Amazon rainforest and I had to survive, and they told me, hey, the rescue team will be here in 3 weeks. Just survive for 3 weeks. I was wondering, could I do it?
Mhm.
And that's really what drew me to like, I was like, could I do this? But yeah, to answer your question, no, um, no formal survival training, no survival schools. I'm not like, and a little bit of getting ahead of myself, but at this point, early in the franchise, the first year of the show, they only have as survivalists like survival instructors, military survivalists, people who've been through like the military survival school, things like that. And my producer, to this day, I'll never forget this. I first meet my producer off camera. We're kind of doing some prep stuff before we start the actual challenge. And he's like, Fernando, we have never had anyone as unqualified as you up to date on this show. That literally, but he said, we believe in you for various other reasons because it's a long vetting process. We can get into the application process, but he's like, we believe in you, but just so you know, you have nothing. You have no formal training, but we think you can do it. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I had nothing, just a boyish love of like challenging myself and perhaps the outdoors.
That is awesome. When you said you didn't have any survivalist background, I was wondering if you did the fan challenge, but it sounds like you
No,
weren't one of the fan challenges, right? You just,
no. The Fallon Challenge actually
wow.
came about later in the
Yeah.
franchise. Early
Okay.
on, they had survival instructors, they had people from survival schools, they had really like YouTube survivalists were being put on the show. And then it's kind of the net's kind of widened since it's been on for over 10 years now. So they've gotten a wider cast of different survivalists. But no, there was not even a fan challenge back then. It was just like, who can do it 21 days, go.
Yeah.
So how did you train yourself then? Like once you found out that you had been selected, what
Oh,
was that process like?
so I apply. My wife like laughs at me. She's like, "You're not going to get accepted. You're not going to be picked." I mean, there's thousands of people. I'm sure that. Fast forward 5 months later, I get the phone call. Hey, you're in. You're leaving in 2 weeks, and my heart just drops. There's very little prep time. They give you very little heads up. So I had maybe 2.5 weeks heads up, and then just a rush of emotions. Like, oh my goodness, I'm excited. Also, oh my goodness, what have I done? Like I am about to be exposed as a fraud in front of all my colleagues, the fire family, my 4 kids are going to be watching. Like, I just felt so much weight because there's no hiding. I mean, you can't be any more stripped down than you are on this show. I mean, in terms of your emotion, physically, obviously you're naked, and then just your raw emotions. It's just, I mean, you're putting yourself out there, and I really felt the pressure and the nerves of that.
What did you ask your your
Oh yeah,
boss
so
at
so
the
what so
time?
what
Like how did that even work? Like getting time off like that?
I had some vacation banked up, so I couldn't do like shift trades. I didn't have time to do anything like that. I just put in like 400 hours of vacation, which fortunately we can do. If you have the vacation banked up, you can use it.
Mhm.
So I have to first kind of talk to my chief one, and say, hey, this is what's going on. I've got picked for the show. My chief was super supportive, which almost made it worse because if he would have been like, hey, that's inappropriate, don't do it, I'd be like, oh, can't do it. I
Can't do it.
tried. Yeah,
Right.
sorry. I was gonna dominate this thing, but I can't. My chief was super supportive. He's like, yeah, go make us proud, do your thing. I'm like, oh, great. My wife was like, "Oh, you know what? Make us proud to do your." So I'm like, man. So everyone's giving me all their support. I just begin to crash course. So I begin to read survival books, the military has a great handbook, just different YouTube videos. I just thought it's like just filling my brain with as much as I can in terms of survival. And again, I knew some basics, just being a camping kind of guy. I knew, oh yeah, food, water, shelter, get a fire. But I began to really just kind of cram and just kind of fill my brain with as much survival knowledge as I could. And what's funny is they told me, hey, you're leaving in 2 weeks, going to the Philippines. So I focus heavily on like tropical, like islands. You're on a beach, you have an ocean there. And so I get with a buddy of mine, another firefighter, and he's like a lobster diver guy. So I learned how to hold my breath for like 6 minutes.
Oh my God.
All kinds of techniques you can do and
Yeah.
blowing out your excess CO2. So he gets me all trained up to hold my breath for like 6 minutes. I'm okay. I go, now I can at least like look for lobster, long breath hold, and sure as can be, about a week out from flying out to the Philippines, big monsoon, big typhoon hits the islands. They go, sorry, Fernando, we're switching your location. Now you're going to Malaysia jungle. And so all
Ugh.
my breath holding techniques and all that cool stuff I was going to use didn't even get used because I was ended up in the rainforest for my first time.
So you're training for one particular instance or one environment. But I think this is really transferring to the fire service a little bit, right? So it's the fact that you, right, even though you learn some breathing techniques, the art or the act of training allowed you to learn some things about yourself, learn some things that can transfer to Philippines or Malaysia or the fire ground, right? Like in
Yeah,
that first
absolutely.
season, right? Like what did you take away that you now still hold dear and try to apply on the fire side from that very first episode?
Man, that first episode, I learned the most that first episode. I've done it multiple times since, but that first one was like the crash course. Uh yeah, you nailed it there, Aaron, in terms of like just being adaptable and just believing in yourself. Just okay, it's not going to be pretty, but just know that if I could learn the breath holding in 5 days, I can learn whatever else I have to
Yeah.
learn on the fly as well. uh Being able to like embrace things not going as planned is a big part of the fire service. I mean, how often do we go to one call and en route we're so sure it's this one call, and then you get there and you go, it's not a vehicle fire, this is an apartment fire, or this is a whatever. And so just keeping yourself like not letting yourself get too locked in to like one preparation course is huge. And that applied for this, and that applies for survival. Obviously, while you're out there, you're always kind of improvising, and that's how the fire service is.
Mhm.
So many of the skills that I honed in for survival translate to the company officer role. It's incredible. I can't even believe the parallels, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adaptability, flexibility, triaging. What's my biggest problem right now? How do I solve it? Things like that. Being calm, having major problems with big consequences if you do it wrong, and just choosing the right answer in an efficient, methodical way. I mean, that's survival, and that's the fire ground. I mean, there's so many calls in the fire ground where I get there and the structure fire is almost like the easier one. That's almost the more prescriptive one. It's
Right.
it's like the vehicles into the power lines with the lines down, with gasoline leaking, with a
Yeah.
baby in the back seat. And you're like, okay, I have to make the right choice right now, but I can't do it recklessly. I have to be really smart about this. And if I choose wrong, there's big consequences. And that's exactly how survival is. It's like
Yeah.
if you're dying of thirst and you go, okay, my plan is to walk 20 miles, that you're gonna lose. That's you failed. You have now put yourself into dehydration, game's over, you're done. Big consequences in survival, and same on the fire ground.
Right. Well, and it's a great mindset because I was watching the latest episode you just did, and I think was that South Africa? Is that right?
Yeah.
Uh, and there you're
Yeah.
doing some self-talk right after a rainstorm where you're freezing, and I could hear you triage yourself, right?
Yes.
Like, and and it was just the first question I thought of. I'm like, did the self-talk happen because of the episode, and do you still do it?
That's a great I often ask myself the same question, like, has survival made me a better company officer, or has me being a company officer made me a better survivalist? I really think it's an exact, like, symbiotic relationship. They have
Yeah.
both just enhanced the other. Um, yeah, and that's a good what you're referring to is just like, okay, I'm in a bad situation, just stay calm, regroup, take a deep breath, and work the problem. Like, don't panic. It's not going to help you. Don't get spooled up. And man, we all know on the fire ground, you get spooled up, you are ineffective. Like, you might as well just go sit inside the fire engine, not come out if you're going to be spooled up, because you will not be making good decisions. And so being able to just like self calm, and yeah, and it's funny you caught that, because yeah, out there in survival, I'm just like, okay, I'm cold, I'm freezing. How do I solve this? There's a solution somewhere out there. And it's just it's just that over and over. And that's what survival is. It's just that same process over and over and over again,
Yeah.
until your needs are met, or in the fire ground until the problem goes away. And so, yeah, it's been an awesome, awesome addition to my career to kind of like hone in on these survival skills, and more so that all those different like thought processes and triaging ability and staying calm under bad situations. It's been a really fun journey.
Yeah. I'm sensing a new book coming out, Leadership for the Fire Service, Naked and Afraid version, or rule number 1, everybody strip down, we're going into a room, we're coming out of
Yeah.
this all better leaders, right? We're all going to learn some things. But the whole part about being naked, I think, really we correlate back to, the program. We always say nothing good comes from being, comfortable, right? You got to get into out of your comfort zone in order to grow. And obviously, there's no better way to do that than naked in an environment where you don't know if you're going to survive or not. You mentioned your why. Okay, so then next question is, why did you do it again and again and again?
And that's the funny part, is what happens is, once you do that and you put yourself through so much suffering and so much misery, but you come out and you succeed. I can't even tell you, Aaron, the wisdom, the perspective that you come out of this with, the appreciation you have for things, it is it is life changing. It really is. And you can read in the book, hey, appreciate friends and family. Hey, stuff doesn't matter. It's all about relationships. I mean, you can know that stuff in theory, but you have to kind of go through something really, really intense, traumatic, to really like let it soak in. And this was, I mean, I come back from these things a different person. And it begins to wear off after a while, if I'm being honest. Like, you kind of
Mhm.
get back into like, oh yeah, we should get new baseboards. But when I'm out there, I'm like, who cares about baseboards? Like, I just love my family and my friends, and like just the people are what matter. So to answer your question, you get so much back. You really do. You come back. Like Tom Hanks in Castaway, when he comes back to civilization, he sees the ice, and he's like, wow, ice. And he has a lighter in his hand. He's like, wow, a lighter. Like, you just have an appreciation for things, and a lot of the silly noise just quiets down, and
Mm.
what really matters rises to the top. And that's something you have to earn. You really do. And that's the gift this challenge gives you. You pay for it, man. You suffer. The suffering is off the charts, but you definitely get rewarded.
So, Fernando, you did 5 different seasons, different locations. Can you tick through them for us? Where were you in each of the seasons?
Yeah, sure. So the very first one was 21 days in Malaysia, supposed to be the Philippines, got switched
Yeah.
last minute to Malaysia. Me and a girl for 21 days. Number two was a 40-day XL. That was in the Amazon rainforest.
Oof.
Number three was now I'm on All Star, my third one. So it was me and another female All Star. Another 21 days in another rainforest, also in the Amazon, but a different country, different location, but also the Amazon rainforest. Number four was 21 days solo in South Africa. And then the last one was the last one standing, their competition version, which was 14 all stars all competing for 45 days for
Oof.
kind of a grand prize. So it's 100,
No,
and I just
where
did
was
the
that
math.
one?
That was also South
That's
Africa as well.
South
So
Africa.
last
Also
two
in
in
Africa.
South Africa, different parts of South Africa, but all in South Africa. These last two, the solo and the last one standing.
Which one was the worst? The hardest environment.
Hardest environment by far is the rainforest. The rainforest is just, I mean, there's a reason why there's not many civilizations who live in the rainforests around the world, because it is harsh. The bugs, it rains every single day. Getting a fire is so difficult. Keeping a fire is so difficult. The mosquitoes eat you alive. Your feet are always like pruny and soaked from just being wet all the time. Yeah, the rainforest is so hard. But in terms of the hardest one, that's the rainforest is the hardest location by far. But the 21 days solo in South Africa was the hardest in terms of just being by yourself. Like solitude can be a form of torture, like solitary confinement in prisons and being by myself for 21 days. Because people don't realize the camera crew leaves at night. That you're by yourself at night. There's a camera crew there in the daytime watching you film or watching you do your survival stuff. But then around, I don't have a watch when I'm out there, but around, like, say 4 p.m., sun's kind of beginning to go down. They all leave. They have a long 3-4 hour trek back, usually like a jeep ride and a hike and maybe even a boat. They have to get back to like their eco lodge or wherever they're staying, and you're alone all night. And so that 21 day solo one, man, you talk about soul searching and like having to dig deep. You have to be like laser focused mentally because those nights just last forever. I mean, you hear all the animal activity and you can't see. It's pitch black and you're by yourself and you're just going crazy and you're freezing. And that one was, man, but most rewarding by far was that solo one, but also the most challenging. Like that really separates the mentally tough from just like, if you're not locked in, you're not going to make 21 days by yourself. There's no way.
Did you have any like tricks that you used to get through the nights and kind of not lose your mind really when you were solo?
Aaron caught some of it in terms of you talk to yourself. I do at least. I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, I got this. I got this. You know what? This is what you're doing this for your kids. You're doing this for the fire family. You're doing it for, just kind of finding your motivation, finding your beacon to keep you moving forward, not letting any kind of like self-pity creep in at all. So to answer your question, I'm being very vocal with myself. I'm just like talking. If I hear like growls in the background or like different like bushes rustling and you can't see, but it's pitch. I'm just like, I start singing to myself out loud, like, okay, you know what? You're not gonna phase me. I mean, just whatever you can to keep your mind right where it has to be. Because the minute your mind, because in the end, to be honest, you have a satellite phone. That's what they give you overnight, and you're one satellite phone call away from like, okay, I want to go home. I mean, you're not there against your will
Mm,
by any means. So it's so easy to leave whenever you want, and it's going to be a long delay if it's at night
yeah.
because they're hours away. Um,
You can
but
ring the
yeah,
bell. You can
you
ring
can
the
ring the
bell
bell when,
anytime.
which makes it really tricky because you have one moment of weakness and you ring that bell, you can't unring it. Once you call for it, once you tap out, you tap out.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Tell
yeah,
me,
it's lots of just like mental focus exercises, really.
yeah, the one thing I also noticed in a theme from a couple of your different episodes, and I don't want to give too much away, but tell me about the power of gratitude.
Yeah. So, and that's part of the gift of being out there is that like the simplicity of life out there when you're surviving is surprisingly fulfilling, and it almost taps into some kind of like human instinctual nature of us. I don't know exactly what goes on out there, but it feels really good to keep a very simple life. And to answer your question, like, let's say I catch a fish one day. I catch that fish, that the level of gratitude I have for that fish, the level of joy I have, I'm as happy that moment as the day my kids are born, if I'm being honest. Like that's how much you're just like, I caught a fish. I'm gonna eat today. Like, oh my goodness, this is the best day of my life. And it's really cool to put yourself in a position in life where a simple little small, you know, 8-inch piranha fish brings you so much joy. And it's a really fun thing to go through where like the simple, like you find a good piece of firewood and it makes your day like this. I got a good piece of firewood. I am set for 3 days now. Like it's pretty cool to humble yourself down to that point where all that stuff matters so much, and it's a nice reset in life, in a day and age that it takes so much more to feel things, it seems like, in normal society. It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome and that goes back to answer your question, why go back? That's part of the gift as well,
It almost resets you, it seems like,
yes, oh my goodness,
right?
100%.
But then how do you, and for our listeners, like, how do you transfer that to the real world then? I mean, for you, you get reset and then you go back and you're like, I have this thing. Are there techniques that you've now kind of said, okay, I'm going to try to put myself back in that scene? Like, how do
Yeah.
what advice do you have for like me who's having a bad day? I'm not going to South Africa naked. I'm telling you, like, You know what? Yeah, Naked and Afraid
Come
was Spring
on,
Break of
give it
'96, but that's it. That's all I'm going through.
give it a try, Aaron.
Uh,
Yeah, and that's the reality is I can tell you about this, and hey, man, what matters is family and friends. That's what matters. But you have to earn it. That's the reality. And so you can read all the books you want. People can go to conferences and hear someone speak, and you can definitely get amazing nuggets from those things by all means. But what I come back with from these experiences, you, I kind of feel like you have to earn it. And
yeah.
so I kind of come back like just high on life, walking on clouds, just feeling amazing. My wife, she lets me go over and over again because she knows I come back a better version of myself. So she wins out too because I come back with so much love and gratitude towards her, towards the kids. I just I love deeper, I love harder. And so, but in terms of passing that on, you have to kind of do something, you have to make yourself uncomfortable. And the
Mm,
more, and it's a direct correlation, the harder the thing you do is, the deeper and the more profound the wisdom you get. So you do a half marathon, you'll get some kind of good nuggets. You do a full marathon, you get some more. You do an Ironman, you get some more. And then you just the harder you push, and this is just kind of my personal take on it. But the harder you push and the more you kind of go through something and you get uncomfortable, the bigger the reward at the end. And so I mean, because guys ask me at my job, "Hey, man," they'll say, "What'd you learn?" And it's like, I don't even know where to begin. It's hard to
yeah.
really,
Okay.
It's like again, I think back to Tom Hanks in Castaway. He comes back to civilization, kind of just looking around, and everyone's like, "Hey, man, welcome back," and he's almost like shell shocked. He's like been through something that no one else really understands, and that's kind of how it feels when I come back from these things.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you get so much out of it and you're so positive because I've watched enough of these shows to see how miserable people seem for so long. They're cold, they're tired, they're covered in mosquito bites. And so many people have tapped out, like well before the challenge is over, and they're like, get me out of here. This is a nightmare. Right. But I think it really speaks to your mindset. You are so positive. And I mean, my husband and I have watched a lot of these shows, and we're like, Fernando's like the most positive, normal person I think that's like ever been on this show. But it's the power of mindset, right? Like you see it through a different lens. Like, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I come back a stronger human being, father, husband? So I just want to shout out that I really appreciate your positivity amongst just unbelievable conditions.
Oh, thank you for the kind words. My wife jokes that like my superpower is my positivity. Like that's kind of how I get through these. Some people actually have skills and skill sets and can actually do things. I just like lean heavily on a positive attitude. And it really kind of is like the best thing I have going for me on these challenges because there are way more accomplished survivalists who have done this program before and who've also tapped, to be honest. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like what I lean on really heavily. And so when the going gets rough and I'm having a down moment, I just that's kind of my go-to play. That's like I need a first down. That's my go-to play in the playbook. It's just, hey, you know what? Stop. I'll even go as far as is I tell myself I make myself smile, physically smile during my darkest moments. Like let's say I'm like just it's just because you have some dark moments out there
Mm,
where you're just like, what am I doing? This is not going well, and I'll force a smile, and I'll force a smile on my face, and just that sheer act makes me laugh at myself because it's so silly, and I begin to like get myself out of that rut. And then that's part of what I enjoy too is that like mental mind control. Like it feels really good to kind of harness the power of your mind and control it. And it's not easy. And we all lose our mind sometimes and lose control sometimes and have
Yeah.
blowouts sometimes. And it feels really good as an exercise to like grab the reins of your mind and like go, no, I'm locked in. I don't care what happens to me, I'm in control of my mind.
yeah.
And that's kind of a fun thing to be able to kind of work on as a development thing.
Right. I mean, I think that transfers to us, to any firefighter, or anybody trying to improve. You talk about get uncomfortable. You talked about breath. You talked about smile, gratitude, right? All those things transfer to being a better leader, but I think they also transfer, as you said, to being a better parent, a better father, a better teammate, a better crew member. Uh, you have a comment that you tell your kids that I wanted you to share with everybody because I think everybody needs to hear this.
Yeah, yeah. So I say this to my kids. My kids hate it when I say this, but they deep down they get it. They don't want to admit they get it. But I always tell my kids, I say, kids, suffering is a gift because when you're not suffering, it feels so good to not be suffering. But you have to suffer first to be able to appreciate how awesome it is to not be suffering. And I'll give them that speech before we do a Spartan race or some kind of like tough activity as a family,
Yeah.
and they just roll their eyes. But then I think they get it because I think it's so true. I mean, you have to appreciate good. You have to kind of go through some bad, or else if it's always just good, then you don't know any difference. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of some of the wisdom you get from being out there naked for 148 days combined.
148 days naked. That's a heck of a resume right there.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision we make as a company is about you, our customer. We wouldn't be where we are today without you, and we don't take that lightly. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com for everything but the truck, and shop our family of brands, including Streamlight, MSA, Lion, Fleer, and more. Now let's get back to the show.
Do you think it gives
Yeah.
you more street cred with your crew or in the fire service? Because we're really like, oh, dude, yeah, that's Captain. He's got his clothes on today. You probably don't recognize him. Obviously, the jokes we can
Oh
hammer. But
yeah.
do you think behind, people are like, hey, this guy's been through a lot of crap. He can deal with this. Do you think that helps people kind of believe in you as a leader a little more?
That's a really good question. I will say you're dead right on the fact that this is kind of now the thing I'm known for. Like you do one little naked survival show in your career, and all of a sudden that's all anyone talks about.
Naked on
So
TV for 45 days, and that's all everybody wants to
yeah,
comment. I mean,
there's
he's
more to me.
firefighter. Yeah.
That's a good question. I'll say this to bring it back to what you mentioned before in terms of what I've learned. I will say I'm definitely known as being a really positive company officer. And so people know, and surprisingly, the fire service, during heavy force hires and you can't go home, and there could be some negativity that forms in the fire station. Just people are getting burned out, busy, sleepless nights, you can go on and on. And I kind of run a pretty positive shift, and people know when they come with me, like leave the grumpiness at the front door because that's not gonna fly on my shift. I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna out positive your negative. I'm not gonna try anything fancy. I'm just gonna keep smiling until you smile too. And so I will say that's definitely I think something I'm known for, and that definitely derives from I think that show.
Yeah. No, you
But
are human too, so you do get negative at times. Do you
yeah, oh,
find that
absolutely.
what's the biggest correlation? Is it like lack of sleep? Is it a bad call? Or what do you think? What's your trigger for negativity?
I would say currently at the moment, the hot topic now for us at Ventura County Fire is that we're having brush fires like year round. I just came back from the Malibu fire a few days ago, and
Wow.
we're just kind of really having to work a lot of days in a row. And it's the nature of the fire service here on the West Coast, the nature of just like the brush fires that we're having. And so that's getting tough because we're putting in 25 days a month sometimes.
Mm.
Very little time to go home. Just again during these brush campaigns, and that's getting tough. Our staffing is just feeling the effects of all of these widespread brush fires, but we can't not go. I mean, this is what we've signed up for, and so
Yeah.
that's been tricky for us as a department, and not just us. That's a Southern California phenomenon. All of we have brush fires in our county. LA City five sends engines, LA County sends engines, Orange County sends engines. So we all help each other, but that's just been probably the most taxing thing now is the staffing.
Mhm. That's when you gotta
Yeah,
dig down deep and you're on day 20 at
yeah.
Naked and Afraid, and you're like, "I'm gonna bring some positivity out of this," right?
Yeah, and I'll say, hey, if I can survive, 21 days naked, covered in bug bites, I can do 2 weeks at a fire station. I mean, come on, people, like we got
Yeah.
this. And so it definitely, now that you mention it, I definitely tap into that well sometimes. Like, hey, we're getting fed. We have clothes on. Like, we have
Yeah,
beds.
right.
How can we
Yeah.
possibly complain right now?
Nothing here is trying to eat me. This is a good day. Yeah.
Exactly.
No lion at the station that day.
Yeah.
Did you get
Yeah.
any good nicknames out of it from your crew?
Uh, Good nicknames. Nothing. I'm trying to think. Nothing specifically. Just you.
Did they give you a hard time? Did they
Oh,
tease
yeah. No,
like
I can't walk into a fire. We have 33 fire stations. I can't walk into one without, oh, Mr. Naked Guy's here.
Yeah.
But it's
Naked
honestly,
Nando. Naked Nando is coming
oh, there
today.
you
Yeah.
go. Aaron's gonna make
that
one
that
for
that
you.
might that might stick. But I
Sorry,
have to
buddy.
say, yeah, thanks for that. You're just feeding the fuel there.
Yeah.
But I have to say, my department's been so supportive of this whole endeavor, and it's been because you know how the fire service can be. Like, I felt I was nervous. Like if I didn't do well, we don't shy back
Oh, yeah.
down if one of our firefighters isn't like stepping up, especially on such an international like large scale, like being televised in front of the whole world. And
Yeah.
so I really felt like I wanted to do well for the fire service as a whole. I felt like an ambassador almost,
Yeah.
and it's gone well. And my department has been so supportive. So it's been really fun to kind of have them along on this journey because there's nothing but positive energy and awesome support for these quirky adventures I do.
Yeah, you definitely did and have been representing us very positively and on behalf of the fire service. I mean, thank you for doing that because I think it's a testament to right. Like this is what we do every day. We figure stuff out and it could be really negative scenario, negative situation, and we just dig our way out of it and try to help other people. What was that moment though? I mean, what your lowest moment of all these that you were just like your hand was almost on the phone. Now you mentioned the time where you were alone that was really difficult. Are there any other times where like scorpion bit you in the ear or something you ate something and like you had to have tons of stomach aches with some of the stuff, right?
Oh
Like I
yeah.
mean,
No, I've eaten some awful things. The not I would never say I was near tapping out because I wouldn't even let my mind go there. But in terms of like having to dig the deepest was by far 21 days alone in Africa. This big huge storm came through and it's just dumping water, and I don't have a really good waterproof shelter because the materials in Africa aren't like you're in the rainforest. There's like huge like Jurassic Park sized leaves. You can
yeah.
make good waterproof shelters out in the rainforest. It's slim pickings in the brush of Africa, and so I didn't have a good waterproof shelter. The storm comes through and it's like dumping on me for day and a half, and I just can't get warm, can't keep the fire going. All my firewood's wet.
Yeah.
And I just remember just curling up like in a
Oh,
ball
yeah.
and just
That was
and,
the last
and
one, right? That was the last episode that you were just on?
I
No.
lose. No, the 21 day was 2 ago. It was
Okay.
the last one was, yeah. I've been in Africa back to back episodes, so it probably looks similar. But the time I was alone, and I've been in storms and various other challenges, so lots of overlap on this footage, I'm sure. But it was that solo 21 day one where I'm just like, just things were compounding against me, and
Mhm.
I hit this moment where I'm like, if I don't get up and act and like fix my problem, I'm not gonna make. If my fire goes out, I'm gonna be done. I'm not gonna survive a night without a fire. I'll have to tap out because they'll tap you out themselves if they see you're not gonna make it. They
Yeah.
won't let you kill yourself.
If you get altered
So
in any way, they're there
ex
medically, right?
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. They're watching you, and if you don't make the right moves and you're not set up for success, they will pull you out if you're gonna end up hurting yourself. And so I just remember distinctly just being in a ball and not wanting to move. I was freezing cold. I'm getting rained on. My fire is barely going. I'm trying to kind of hover over it to keep it going because the water is hitting it. And I was like, either act right, like I'll do the whole like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown, get up and do something, or you're gonna end up losing this whole thing. And that was probably my darkest. And you're by yourself, so you have no one to bounce off. Like, hey, we got this. So anyway, that was man, that was and and I knew I was in a bad spot because I saw a break in the clouds. I go, oh, okay, the storm's gonna break. I'm gonna be okay. And then the clouds, maybe within an hour, came back, and I found myself almost like whimpering. Like I saw the
Ah,
clouds forming again. I was like, I can't handle another round of storms. And that's how like broken down I was.
mhm.
Which was a weird place to be. It was a very foreign place to be that broken down, and I ended up getting through it, obviously. But Yeah, it just you gotta just find a way, and again, but that's how the fire service is. You know, it's a really cool. All those skills I'm honing there is helping me in the fire station, so it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah.
The
Triage.
power of
What can I do?
resilience,
Yeah.
we talk about it all the time with
Yeah,
resilience.
and emotional resilience, physical resilience, right? For us
Mhm.
here in the West Coast, we have these big brush fires, hard physical labor, but also emotional resilience, having a tough pediatric call, you know, and seeing trauma. Resilience in different arenas is a really valuable skill.
Yeah. Well, I want to hit a few more things. Let's just go through a couple quick hits here. What was the grossest thing you ate on any of the challenges?
Oh my goodness. In the Amazon rainforest, I stumbled across like this big, like football size 5 pound land snail. It was just and the minute I saw it, my heart sunk because I knew I had to eat it, but I knew it was going to be rough. And it was just a legit football size snail, just but a snail. I mean, nothing meaty, just rubbery. And I cut it up in pieces and I barbecued it and I charred it and it was it felt like the old school Fear Factor, like don't vomit, just swallow,
Right.
just like
Right?
Right.
don't think about it, you know. That was rough. I've eaten some rough things, but that definitely stands out as like,
Ugh.
whew.
Oh man, I'm
Um,
never going to be able to unhear that. That's tough. Like,
yeah, and I had a when I was cooking it, it became night, so I couldn't see. It was by a small campfire, but I couldn't see
oh,
very well. So I'm eating like there'd be times I'm like, am I eating like the antennas? Am I eating like the butthole? Like I would like be chewing through things on this snail. I couldn't quite see because it was so dark,
oh
and
gosh,
I ate the whole entire thing.
it
But
gets
oh
worse.
my goodness,
Ugh.
it was I could have easily vomited if I didn't like stop myself.
Oh, oh my
But
gosh.
you need the protein. You know, you can't
You
let
need
that.
you need to right? That was your priority. Priority, I need
Yeah,
food, I need fuel.
Yeah.
Here's a snail. Bleh,
yeah.
right?
Oh my God.
Ugh.
Well, how many pounds did you lose? They always do like the before and
Yeah.
after on Naked and Afraid, and they always do the weight check at the end because you're so depleted. You
Oh
have
yeah.
potentially only snails to eat while you're out there. What was your biggest weight loss on the challenge?
I lost my biggest one was probably the XL. It was 40 days in the
Mhm.
Amazon. I lost around 45 pounds.
Oof.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I go in a little bit heavier usually just in preparation.
Yeah.
You know, not maybe like 8, 10 pounds heavy. I'll go in. But you know what's funny? I always come down to about 160 on my weight. And then once I hit there, my bones weigh what they weigh and my
Yeah, that's your
organs weigh what
set
they weigh.
point. Yep.
Yeah, I
That's where
don't
you
go
go.
below that, but I'll come
Yeah.
back usually about 160. And I usually go in around 200 pounds.
Yeah.
What about favorite contestant on the shows? Anybody who you worked with on any of the seasons where you felt like you were learning a ton from them?
You know, you everybody comes to mind. I mean, it's such a wide array of personalities and experiences and backgrounds, and it's like the fire station. I mean, right? Like you get a
Yeah.
busy fire, you get a busy firehouse with different people from different backgrounds, and there's so much you can extract from everybody. It's the same way out there in these group settings. People from all walks of life, different viewpoints on things, and it's really fun. And now, granted, it can be challenging. Don't get me wrong. Like that that's like the double-edged sword. The people are awesome and you create like these lifelong bonds with these people you're out there with. But there's also some like, you know, times where it can be like tricky to navigate. Just you're under duress, you're starving, you're freezing,
Oh
it
yeah,
can be
there's
hard to
some
get
Yeah.
along.
fights that have
Oh yeah,
broken
oh no,
out
by all.
between people over the years. People have tapped out because they don't want to deal with a person.
But they also add so much to it. And so I
Yeah,
couldn't name one person, but all throughout all my experiences, there's been so much. I've always been able to find common ground with everyone there.
yeah.
And people have been more challenging than others, perhaps, and maybe we don't quite align as much. But I pride myself on always being able to kind of find common ground with everybody and really learn things. And again, that comes back to the fire station. It's the same way. There isn't a crew I cannot work with at my department.
Yeah.
There's so much goodness in everybody. You just gotta find the common ground.
There's got to be someone who's like the craziest who you worked with out there. Come on, give us some tea here.
He calls himself the Joker. His name is Gary. Uh, Great guy. Been out there with him. He's a wild card. He's the real
He
deal.
is a
And
wild card.
yeah, he lives this stuff. I mean, he lives off the grid in his normal life. Like I am by far like one of the most like normal, like, hey, I have a family and a mortgage and I go to basketball practice and dance
They
recitals,
tease
you
you,
know.
right? Because you drive a minivan.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
once they're like, because they're all kind of off the grid, just living this stuff year round, and I'm just like the minivan driving, suburban dad. And once that came out, they're like, "What? What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I know. What am I doing
Right. I
here?
don't, I'm,
I agree."
yeah.
Was Gary the
Um,
one who would always eat like questionable stuff?
yes, yes.
Okay.
He's talented. He's the real deal, but he's a different breed. I mean, this to him isn't even that hard. It's hard, but he truly just like lives in this world.
Yeah.
He's it's impressive, but he's definitely he's kind of a wild card for sure.
Yeah. But we all have that in our crews, so like
Yes.
you're saying, like all this transfers back in. Do you
Yeah.
can like, how does the camera stuff work? Can you use the camera people? Can you ask them questions? Are they there or are
Yeah,
they?
so they don't so the way good question. So there's a camera person assigned to you, and they kind of follow you around, but they don't really talk, and they're kind of at a distance most times. I mean, they'll kind of zoom in and kind of come closer if you're doing something very nuanced. But you kind of go numb to them. You kind of like the first day or two, you're very aware of them being there, and you kind of like bend with your knees. You don't want to give them like a butt crack shot or anything. You're kind of
Yeah.
very aware
Eh.
that you're aware that they're there.
Day one, yeah, but day 20, heck, it's
Oh,
all who
oh
cares,
my!
right?
Day
Yeah.
three, you can care less at that point. I mean, you get so used to them, and you go so numb to their presence. But no, to answer your question, there isn't a whole lot of discussion. And to be honest, they don't really know what you're doing. They're not survival experts at all. They're just simply camera crew people, and they go from this show to Deadliest Catch to Ice Road
Hmm.
Truckers to whatever they're doing. They're very talented, and they're definitely like the Navy SEALs of camera people because they
Yeah.
can operate in really harsh conditions, but they're not survivalists. So they don't have any idea what you're doing. They
Has
just
your
watch
mind
you.
has your mind ever switched to them and said, "Hey, are you doing okay?" Like, has there ever been a situation where your firefighter kind of service oriented mindset went to, "Hey, you okay on that?" Or they fell
Yeah,
or
absolutely. One time, one of the guys had a little small camera. He was kind of I was putting a camera up on a tree to kind of like have a good shot of what we were doing in the water, and the camera fell into the water. And that thing's probably $10,000. So I'm like, and I'm already in the water doing who knows what I'm doing. I go, hey man, I'll get that for you. He's like, no, 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 no. Don't burn the calories deep diving in this lagoon getting my camera. But I just instantly like the whole
you
neighbor
can't turn
helping
it off.
neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, no, no, let me get it. I start deep diving for this guy's camera. He's like, no, please, that's not your role. Don't worry about the camera. But yeah, there's definitely moments where, because you're out there and if they they fall or they this or they that, and because they're people, we're people.
Yeah.
Um,
You didn't tell them,
but
"Hey, I've practiced the first show for the 6 minutes. I can
yeah,
hold my breath.
I can
Watch."
hold my breath. I get to finally use this now.
Oh my
But
gosh. Well,
yeah, but you go numb to them, so it's pretty cool. You kind of get in your own little zone. You kind of just ignore them.
is it safe to assume that you kind of go numb to the cameras and you also kind of go numb to just being naked? I mean, was it weird at
Oh,
first and then you just don't think about it anymore?
absolutely, yeah. The first that when you first meet your partner or your partners, if it's a bigger group, that is the most awkward moment of my entire life. I've been married to my wife. We're high school sweethearts. I've been with my wife since I was 15, so I haven't seen a lot of other naked people, at least in person, in my whole life. And so seeing a naked woman like that, it is insanely awkward. But yeah, within I would say 2 days, it's the least of your worries, and all you want to do is like find water, find food, get shelter, get firewood. Um, but the initial introductions are always just painfully awkward for me because I'm kind of like uptight about that. I'm like, naked woman, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always impressed with the people who come up with like the coverings, and obviously
Yeah,
everybody kind of puts their satchel in certain places so there's less to be blurred and things like that. But then, people will just like straight up create a bra out of leaves and it's impressive.
there's some amazing survivalists out there. I mean, just and back to Aaron, your point about things I've learned from people. I mean, just so impressive. People have made little baskets and clothing and little backpacks and I mean, just way more skilled than me. My power is, hey, I just stay super positive, mentally tough. I can get through anything. But I've been super impressed by things people have made out there, and I've learned so much.
You adapt to your environment, and then you kind of go back to fundamental principles you um that you really kind of embrace, right, in life. And it seems like positivity is one, looking for positivity in someone else is another, and those are very admirable traits, and they obviously led to your success. I will tell you, yeah, I don't have pants on doing this whole podcast, and I'm comfortable now. So
See,
you're
right?
right.
At
You
first
just
awkward, but now it's great.
I was cold at first. I'm fine now. I just kind of adapted to it and overcame. And, and I love the lessons, right? The ultimate theme is getting out of your comfort zone. And you are just an ambassador for that. But I think the other side of this is just all the wonderful things that comes with it. The gratitude, the really, not necessarily forcing you, but really helping you change your mindset. I do want to just before we stop and turn to putting you in the hot seat. One of my favorite scenes in these is when you see your family. Can you describe that?
Oh, yeah, that's that those are like magical. They really are. And again, back to the whole like why you do it. Because when you finish the level of, I mean, you always love your family, right? Undeniably, but it's just so much more intense to see your kids after, potentially 2 months, and your wife, and coming home just feels there's no bigger high that I've felt than those exact moments, than finishing a challenge, coming back home, seeing my wife and kids, and just being like, wow, I have a great life. I don't really have any problems, and any problems I do have are so manageable after what I've been through.
Mhm.
And that's why you do it. And my kids love it too because they get some TV airtime. They've showed some of that footage on TV, so
Yeah.
my kids are all pumped to be on TV. And yeah, it's been a quirky chapter in my life. I never thought would have kind of blossomed the way it has, but here I am 10 years later, and it's. I think I'm done. I really do, but it's been an amazing journey.
Well, besides now the new leadership idea I gave you about naked leadership 101, I think there's your book.
The book,
Um,
boom.
there it is. But we really appreciate you transferring, those lessons learned, and obviously a little behind the scenes peek. And for those that haven't watched, now that they know you, they're invested. They should watch and just see what you had to go through. And I was able to, you know, Janelle said, "Have you watched yet?" She keeps sending me text messages. I'm like, "Okay, I'll watch." And then I was super impressed and enthused and engaged in watching how you handled yourself. And then to hear you say it's just about solving problems, man. Just what do I got to do today? Triage the moment, stay calm. And I think those are things and lessons that our listeners should take and can help them be better every single shift, and that's the essence of it. But you're not off the you're not done yet though. So you thought these other questions might have been difficult. Now we throw you on the hot seat. We ask you some real heavy hitters real quick to end up and bring it all together. And Janelle has great questions, and I just kind of I'm on her. I just follow her tail on these, but I'll let her start.
All right,
All right.
Fernando, if you had to start your career over from day one, what would you do differently?
I would say it's I would tell you, a young firefighter, it's never too early to get involved. I felt like at least back 20 years ago or so, like the new guy, hey, you just kind of stay, and we've left this era of, but back then there was a little bit of like the new guy just kind of stay quiet, sit in the back, face backwards, don't say a whole lot, which had its place maybe traditionally in the past. Um, but it kind of delays that firefighter's progress. So there's stuff to do. You can still contribute in ways. You can still offer a lot of good to an organization, and so uh, especially now. And now that's a much less of an issue. I feel like we're encouraging young people to just dive in there, jump into classes, put yourself out there, join committees, whatever
Yeah,
day
listen to
one.
podcasts. Listen to
Yeah,
motivation
exactly.
podcasts. Yep.
Um, so, but that's something that I think I'm happy to see that's kind of changed culturally, and that's something that I think would I always encourage the newer firefighters for sure.
That's great.
Very well said. I agree 100%. I think it's a lot more embraced. Just as, the crazy stories, right? We have to have stories. There's always these crazy firehouse stories. Everybody's got one. And I'm going to ask you, what's your craziest, wildest firehouse story that you feel you can share on the pod?
Ah, craziest firehouse story. I will, well, not so much a firehouse, more of an incident, and it ties into Naked and Afraid. Just relatively recently, I was on a call, and it wasn't super dynamic, but I was on the radio a little bit, having to, direct traffic, and sure as can be, someone came out of a bank and goes, "Fernando, naked and afraid." And I was like, and I'm kind of like on the radio, and you got kind of like you don't want to misspeak on the radio, and so oh, okay, cool, thinking that was it, and then literally the man comes over, puts his arm around me, and goes, "I need a selfie," and I've now keyed the mic. And I had the worst radio traffic of my life. It was embarrassing. I almost wanted to pull out a bulletin to justify and explain to my department why I sounded. I was like, I didn't release the mic. I could just released it and like save myself. Kept the mic keyed as I just bumbled and began to speak to him while the mic is keyed, and it was just a disaster. That was probably not even 2 months ago. And I
Oh
was
my
just like,
gosh.
what am I doing? But the guy was so passionate. He was such a big fan. It was so cool. But I'm like, what did I just do? My goodness. Guy caught me off guard really good. So
Did when
Oh
you
my
get
gosh.
back, does your crew have like some like a cake made where you're nude on it or something like that? Like, did they do something crazy?
no, they know food's gonna be a priority. What I do have, speaking of cake though, is I get obsessed out there every single time for some reason with cheesecake. And so my first phone call once I'm back in civilization, but I'm still like overseas, I'll call my wife on, but she knows. I'm like, hey, you're gonna have to make sure you have a cheesecake waiting for
Mhm.
me when I get home, because that just like just infiltrates my mind, and I cannot get it out of my. I need a cheesecake when I get back. I don't know what it is. So every single time, all 5 episodes or five challenges, the wife has an actual full Costco cheesecake waiting for me when I get back, and and I gained the 40 pounds back in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
I always love it on the challenges on the finale episodes where they would show whoever made it the 40 days or whatever it was, all, you know, coming back to civilization, but not even yet before they get back on the plane to go see their family. But it's like they get a robe, they're allowed to go shower,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and then they're
shower's gotta be
taken
great.
to somewhere where there's just like a table of food with like
yes.
anything under the sun, and just watching the people just become like ravenous and
Oh,
just like
and
going for whatever their thing of choice is. It's like, is it the chips? Is it the cheeseburger? Is it the cheesecake? Like, it's just funny
yeah.
to watch.
No, I know. And there's a medical staff who's like, "Hey, survivalists, be careful, be careful."
Yeah, yeah,
Like they're like, "Don't." I mean, it's their way of rewarding us. They know we become obsessed with like fat and salt and like things that we're
Yeah.
not getting out there, because we get a lot of, like, let's say in a fish you'll get protein, but you're not getting salt or fat, and so we just become obsessed with fat and salt, and so they want to give that to us, obviously, but the medical team is always like, "Dude, hard boiled egg, white rice," and we're like, "Nah, that's boring. We want
yeah.
some Oreos," you know.
Yeah.
But there's been some people who've like, oh yeah, vomiting is super common after that. If you don't take it easy, because
Mhm.
your body goes into
Right.
shock for sure.
Oh my gosh. Crazy. Okay, Fernando, if you weren't a firefighter, what would you be doing?
Ooh, not these are great questions, Janelle. Wow. Oh man. I you know what's funny? My one of my most enjoyable jobs before I got into the fire service was I was a YMCA camp counselor, and I really, really just I did it for multiple summers, throughout college, and I just loved it. And so I could see myself doing something kind of cheesy like that, just like just teaching, maybe a PE teacher. I just really love like just being silly and having an excuse to be silly, and the kids give me a good excuse. And so something along those lines. PE
Yeah.
teacher, YMCA camps, maybe a outdoor fun summer camp thing or something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, something along those lines, I think.
Well, fire service is very similar to that.
Exactly. I have a bunch of
We
kids I
have
have to watch.
yeah, we're about 8 to 10-year-olds, basically, fart jokes are funny, being naked must be
Oh,
just hilarious to everybody, right? Like, that's our mentality. So it's very
oh,
similar. They're paid a little bit better probably, which is nice, right?
I've used the line many times in my firehouse that, guys, I am paid to be the adult in the room. I'm so sorry. Believe me, I don't want to be the buzz killer, but I am paid to be the adult in the room. So we're gonna
Yep.
have to put away the fireworks that the citizens have brought into us to relinquish. We can't
Yeah.
use them. No.
Yeah. You can't
Um,
light that little lithium ion battery on fire and see what it does again, like, let
exactly.
UL do that. I know it's fun, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, again, thanks for being here. We got one final question for you, and when you're not challenging yourself with these episodes of being naked and afraid, and you say you do that because it brings you, peace, and it makes you a better person. So if outside of those episodes and challenging yourself that way, what else do you do to make yourself better?
Ooh. What's interesting? I just went back to school. I'm in my very first class working towards my degree now as a 44-year-old man.
Nice.
I'm back enrolled in school, I know, and it honestly feels I kind of missed that, like, that learning chapter of our life where you're like and we're always learning obviously in the job, but that dedicated, like, "Hey, you have an essay to write, and you have to do a paper," and so, yeah, I'm my first class back into, working towards my master's in public administration,
Oh,
and it
excellent.
yeah, it feels good, I'm a little rusty, I won't lie, I'm like, "References, APA format, what does
Oh,
that mean?"
APA
I'm like
7 sucks, man. I can tell you that, but yep.
Yeah, right. But it feels good to kind of re-engage that part of my brain and kind of, talk about being uncomfortable. Ugh, a five-page paper at this point in my life is
Zam
pretty
knows
harsh.
a little something about this.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you are you back in school, Aaron?
I am a semester away. One of our very first episodes was with Dr. Reggie Freeman. I said, I've always wanted to go back to school, get my master's. He said, well, then do it. And so I actually the next week I enrolled, and I'm about a semester and a half away. So for getting my
Congratulations. I'm
master's.
at I'm at the very beginning of this journey, so I have a few years ahead of me. But
Yeah.
but
It,
uh, that's awesome to see that and hear
it
that.
yeah, it is worth it. And it's like you said, writing a paper again, writing a discussion is not comfortable, was not at first, and it's become part of the norm. But you just adapt, right? And it does make you better, even if the content doesn't make you better. The act of doing research, the act of writing, makes you better in your
Absolutely.
job. It transfers, and going back to all the different things that you talked to us about today, right? It's about your mindset. How do you approach that problem? How do you approach that opportunity? And you have a wonderful gift, and I hope that people that are listening can maybe take a second, take a deep breath, and try to figure out how they can things to be more positive, right? How they can switch things to see the positives in people and those around them, and right, and that's really the essence of what you've transferred to us, and so thank you so much for sharing and for being here. Great
Yeah,
stuff,
no,
my
thank you
friend.
so much for having me. It was a blast.
Well, for those that are just listening to us, I'm not going to tell you whether he's closed or not. You should go to our YouTube channel, and then also email us, bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. You can let me know if we're on something or onto something. We'd love it if you'd rate, review, and share this show about the wonderful insights that we got from our star, our naked and afraid star, our star captain, Captain Fernando Calderon, and again, listen to the episode, share it, because there's so many wonderful things that he shared with us. I mean, it's all about making sure you're doing something to be uncomfortable, because it leads to gratitude. It leads to so many other things that transfer to being better at what you do, being a better parent, being a better firefighter, being a better fire captain. Because when it comes down to it, right? The essence of the program and the essence of what we do should be about learning something, doing something, and sharing something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.